give, because it's easy to give up. I almost gave up.
Well, I think the most wonderful thing about Leslie is she not only has a mystery book, she has some other interesting stories to tell about some pretty famous people.
One in particular.
Yes. Well, okay. In addition to my Sally Solari, for those who don't know me.
We're going to get to that.
Yeah, I have this mystery series. But it's true. It's not for a year though, so don't get too, hold your horses there. But I did just get the cover for it, and I'm really excited. And it's in copy edits right now. And it's a memoir of the dinner I cooked, as well as the months of preparation and obsession regarding a dinner that I was lucky enough to get to cook for Ruth Bader Ginsburg and her charming and dapper husband Marty some years back. And it's called Justice is Served, A Tale of Scallops, the Law, and Cooking for RBG. I'm very excited about that.
That's a must read.
Yes, I think so.
And
it's sort of
so excited.
It's an interesting mix of cooking and law. I don't think there are a whole lot of books that blend cooking and law. But you don't have to be a lawyer. It's written definitely for the non-lawyer to understand. But you learn a lot about her life and why she's such a big deal. And you learn a lot about scallops.
And how was the rating different
for a
memoir versus
very
fiction?
Different? I just went into it blindfolded. I didn't know what I was doing, and I approached it kind of like I would a mystery. And it, so this happens and this happens, and I realized as I got my first edits back on it, you really need a narrative arc, a personal narrative arc for a memoir. And so I had to really think about what the dinner meant for me and how it affected me personally, and put more. You're not used to putting yourself into a work of fiction. And so that was hard for me, but I'm happy with the way it turned out. But that's the main difference, I think.
Wonderful. Okay, so let's go back to your main reason you're at Malice. Sell us on Sally.
Okay, well, it's also about cooking, because I love food. I've loved food since I was a little kid. Thank my mother for that. Sally Solari, that's a Sally Solari Mysteries, and she's a fourth-generation Italian-American whose family first emigrated to Santa Cruz, California, where the books take place and where I live. And the fishermen emigrated there in the 1890s, and it's loosely based on the real Italian families that still to this day live in Santa Cruz and are very influential in it. And Sally's family owns an old school Italian seafood restaurant out on the historic Fisherman's Wharf in Santa Cruz. And in book one, her aunt is found murdered in the garde-manger, the cold food preparation area of her restaurant called Gauguin, so her Aunt Letta was sort of the black sheep of the family. She left and traveled the world and worked at Chez Panisse and came back and opened this upscale foodie type place in Santa Cruz. And Sally inherits it at the very beginning of book one, which sets off this conflict within the family, because her father, who owns Solari's, he's upset that she no longer wants to work there, and also he kind of feels that she started to look down on their family tradition and become one of those snooty foodie people. And so that's sort of a dynamic that is undercurrent for all four of the books, and the fifth one's coming out this August. Because I think it's nice to have some sort of...
And what will that be called?
The book that's coming out this August is called The Fragrance of Death. I'm very excited about it because it's...
that's...
Yeah. That's what? In it, it's an ironic title because in it, on page one, Sally wakes up having lost her sense of smell. And it's not COVID related. The book takes place before COVID. She has had a vicious sinus infection, which knocks out her sense of smell. And it's based on something that happened to me about 10 years ago. That happened to me. I had a sinus infection. I woke up one morning and I couldn't smell a thing, which meant, of course, I couldn't taste anything. And I was told by my ENT that the nerves may never regenerate. They don't know. And it was a terrifying time for me because I love food. Luckily, it did come back after about 6 weeks. And so this happens to Sally. And so she, as you know, she owns and works the line at this restaurant. And so she's horrified by it. And it plays, her lack of sense of smell plays into the into the story. It's set partly on an artichoke farm north of town because I love artichokes and I wanted to put them in. Why not?
Absolutely.
Well, that's a very unique angle
Yeah.
to.
Well, I'd written most of the draft before, or I'd come up with the idea and written the beginning of it before COVID hit. But it's interesting because many people now will have experienced it because it's, obviously one of the maladies that affects people when they get COVID. So,
Well, we thank you so much for dropping back, taking time out of this crazy whirlwind of a conference.
I'm honored to have been asked. I love you gals. I remember when I first met you I believe I bought you all a drink.
Yes.
Yes, you did.
At Malice about
That's-
4 or 5 years ago.
You were
or 4
very
years
close
ago.
to our heart. So please tell our audience your website so they can find out all about you.
So you can read all about me and Sally Solari at lesliekarstauthor.com.
Wonderful.
And it's Karst.
Okay, that's great.
Thank you so much.
And I am so thrilled she's continuing.
Yeah, me too. You and me. Both.
We are thrilled to talk to one of my heroes, Lori R. King, who writes the wonderful Mary Russell Sherlock Holmes novel series. Welcome, Lori.
Thank you, and it's lovely to be called a hero. I've been called a titan today, which I'm not sure
Ooh, a
whether that's
titan.
better or worse.
I like hero. Mary Russell is one of my favorite characters, and I have loved her progression from the beekeeper's apprentice up to the modern world. She's grown and so is Sherlock.
He certainly has, yeah. Yeah, I was thinking the other day that the series started when she was 15 and she's 25 now, so it's she's a different person, and yet not entirely. So yeah.
And she's seen more of the world than she did in the beginning.
True. That's very true. Yeah.
And I've enjoyed her journey. Like I told you, Mary Russell is who I would like to be in my other world.
Wouldn't we all like to be her?
Well, yes, because
Tall, thin, clever, assertive, and rich. I mean,
and she doesn't suffer fools, and she says what she thinks. She's a wonderful character. What is next for Lori? What are you working on now?
I have a new book coming out in September called Back to the Garden, and it's not a Russell. It is the first in a series about a young woman who is a cold case investigator she's sort of on medical leave from the police department. But when I finished the first draft in December, and as I said, I never quite know what I'm writing until I get it written. So I then look at my first draft and say, oh, that's who that character wanted to be. And I realized that she is herself very much a Sherlock Holmes type. I mean, she's 21st century, but she is, she has certain neurological interesting things going on. She has a lot of his habits, and although she works for the police department, she is not a terribly good fit. So she gets involved in this cold case that seems to have to do with a serial killer who was working in California in the 70s, because the body that she's investigating is found on a place that used to be a commune in the 70s. So it's got two timelines, several different people. The main character is Raquel V. One of her fellow characters is from the Martinelli series, Al Hawken. Although Kate Martinelli doesn't appear in this one. She's sort of mentioned, but not by name. And I just really loved how the two stories wound together. There's part of it is set in the 70s on this commune. Part of it is set in modern day Bay Area. Part of it's the cops, and part of it's the hippies.
Well, I'm sold.
I do.
Yeah,
I can't wait to read it.
I absolutely am fascinated with the whole commune, that scene back in the 70s. I just think
Kate Ashbury.
Yeah, it's really, really a fascinating time, in political and everything, and that.
And so odd to be thinking of writing a quote historical unquote that I was there.
Yeah.
Well,
I was alive. That should be historical.
Well, I just heard the other day that technically the 90s are now history.
No.
Because it's
Can't
over 20 years ago. So,
Yeah.
and I'm like, no.
No.
I think 50 years has got to be the limit.
But one of the fun things about it is that you get to write a few characters who are in their 70s and such. And they were a lot of fun because they're lively people.
Yes.
Definitely.
We don't shrivel up and
No.
go away when we hit 70.
That's for sure. That's for sure. Can you share with our listeners your website so they can find out more about you and your books?
Yeah, I'm at laurierking.com. And if you'd like to, you like to follow me, I have a newsletter, I have Facebook, I have all these other things. So
Oh, wonderful.
I just hang out. What can I say?
Great.
Well, if you have not, for our listeners, if you have never read the Mary Russell series, oh my goodness, you're
Kate
missing.
Martinelli's good too.
Yes, and Kate Martinelli
but she's
too.
modern.
Well, even Kate, as you meet her in the 80s. So.
Well, yeah. So.
Absolutely. But they're delightful books, and we highly recommend it by the Dark and Stormy team.
Thank you.
Yes.
I thank you, ladies.
And we thank you, Lori, for taking a few minutes off your busy schedule to come and talk with us.
Always a joy.
Well, that wraps up a rather long episode. We thank all these authors for joining us for a little impromptu get-together. It was a lot of fun, and we look forward to all their new books. And we hope you'll join us next week when we have a regular episode. And remember,
Life would be boring without a little mystery. Bye.